the riff that started a revolution. It began with a sound. One sharp, chugging, unforgettable riff that split the world of music in half. It was 1968. The band was Led Zeppelin. And the riff? Whole Lotta Love. Jimmy Page stood in the studio, guitar slung low, fingers dancing across the strings. That opening riff was raw, bold, and dangerous. It was different from everything else on the radio. It was like the sound of thunder trapped inside a speaker. And once it hit the airwaves, nothing would ever be the same. But Page wasn't the only one changing the game. Across the ocean, a young Tony Iommi of Black Sabbath had lost the tips of 2 fingers in a factory accident. Doctors told him he'd never play guitar again. He didn't listen. Instead, he melted plastic caps through his fingers and tuned his guitar lower to ease the pain. The result? A deep, growling sound that became the foundation of heavy metal. Listen to Iron Man or Paranoid. That's the birth of a genre, all from a man who refused to quit. Soon, riffs weren't just part of a song, they were the song. And in 1973, Deep Purple dropped Smoke on the Water. A riff so simple, any kid could learn in 5 minutes. But it carried the weight of a legend. The story behind it? A casino in Montreux burned down during a Frank Zappa concert, and the smoke rolled over Lake Geneva. Ritchie Blackmore turned that moment into a piece of music history. Every riff had a story. Some came from pain, some from chaos. But all of them had one thing in common. They hooked you instantly. And the riffs just kept coming. The night Keith played the impossible. By the mid-1970s, rock guitarists were worshipped like gods. But one man didn't care about fame. He only cared about the groove. Keith Richards of the Rolling Stones wasn't flashy. He didn't play fast. But he had something better. Feel. Start Me Up. Just 5 notes. But they hit like lightning. Here's the twist. Keith recorded that riff in the late 70s as part of a reggae experiment. The band didn't even take it seriously. Years later, he dug it back up, cleaned it off, and turned it into one of the Stones' biggest hits. A forgotten riff became a stadium anthem. Meanwhile, in Los Angeles, a wild-haired guitarist named Eddie Van Halen was blowing minds. Eruption wasn't a song. It was an explosion. Just Eddie, a guitar, and 2 minutes of finger-tapping madness that redefined what a riff could be. Nobody had heard anything like it. And suddenly, every kid with a guitar wanted to be him. But not everyone followed the shredder path. Some stayed true to raw power. Take AC/DC's Back in Black. Angus Young didn't need 100 notes. Just 4 perfect ones. When that riff dropped, people didn't just listen, they moved. These riffs weren't accidents. They were the result of passion, struggle, and obsession. But something was coming that would turn everything upside down again. The grunge wave and a riff that smelled like teen spirit. Seattle. The world was drowning in hairspray and guitar solos. Then came Nirvana. 3 guys in flannel, armed with distortion and attitude. Kurt Cobain didn't want to be a guitar hero. He wanted to destroy everything that came before him. So he wrote a riff that did just that. Smells Like Teen Spirit opened with 4 gritty chords. Loud, jagged, and full of rage. It didn't sound clean. It sounded real. And the world listened. MTV couldn't stop playing it. High schoolers formed bands overnight. Record stores couldn't keep up. But the pressure crushed Cobain. He once said he hated how the song became bigger than the band. He never wanted to be the voice of a generation. He just wanted to scream into the void. Still, the riff lives on. Not because it's perfect, but because it's honest. Around the same time, Rage Against the Machine brought funk, politics, and fury into one sound. Tom Morello's Killing in the Name riff wasn't just music, it was a weapon. Made with toggle switches and wah pedals, it sounded like a machine about to explode. And when the crowd shouted back, F*** you, I won't do what you tell me, it became a movement. Grunge and alternative were rewriting the rules. But just when people thought riffs were fading, a British band brought them back in a way nobody expected. The comeback riff that shocked the world. It was 2001. The world had changed, and many thought rock was finished. Then came Jack White. In a time full of auto-tune pop, the White Stripes dropped Seven Nation Army. One riff, one guitar, no bass, and yet it shook stadiums. It didn't even sound like a guitar. It sounded like an army marching. Fans chanted it like a war cry. Soccer stadiums, political rallies. Every corner of the world echoed that riff. What made it so powerful? Simplicity. Jack White tuned his guitar down and used a pitch shifter. The idea was to make something unforgettable, and he did. Suddenly, riffs were back in fashion. Bands like Arctic Monkeys, Muse, and Royal Blood followed, each with their own signature sound, proving the riff wasn't dead. It had just been waiting for the right time to strike again. And the beauty of the riff? It never belonged to just one era. From Chuck Berry's Johnny B. Good to Metallica's Enter Sandman, it was always the spark that lit the fire. But the real question remains, what makes a riff iconic? What makes a riff truly iconic? A riff can be fast. It can be loud. It can even be strange. But none of that alone makes it iconic. So what is? Think about Sweet Child O' Mine by Guns N' Roses. Slash was just fooling around with a silly finger exercise. He didn't think much of it. But when the band heard it, something clicked. Suddenly, the joke became a masterpiece. That winding, dreamy riff, it became the sound of late 80s rock glory. An iconic riff doesn't need to be complicated. It needs to connect. It grabs you in the first second. It sticks in your head. It makes your fingers move, even if you've never touched a guitar in your life. Another example? Day Tripper by the Beatles. It was the first time a band known for clean pop stepped into the world of hard guitar grooves. George Harrison and John Lennon traded licks, and suddenly the world of rock and roll opened up a little wider. And sometimes, a riff becomes iconic because of what's happening around it. When David Bowie released Rebel Rebel, glam rock was on fire. But that sharp, almost punk-like riff made it clear this wasn't just glitter and makeup. This was rebellion, pure and raw. When you hear those notes, you don't just hear music. You feel the moment. You remember where you were, what you wore, who you were with. That's the power of a riff. And that's why even decades later, they still live on. But there's one more twist. The riffs you've never heard, but should. Everyone knows the big ones. But buried beneath the surface are riffs just as powerful, just waiting to be discovered. Take Sails of Sharon by Scorpions. It came out in the 70s, but it sounds like something from the future. Guitarist Uli Jon Roth fused classical music with heavy metal. The riff is fast, elegant, and full of drama. Few outside guitar circles talk about it, but once you hear it, you never forget. Or listen to Funk No. 49 by James Gang. Joe Walsh laid down a funky, swampy riff that grooves harder than most metal songs. It doesn't scream, it swaggers. And that's what makes it unforgettable. Even modern bands have hidden gems. Royal Blood's Out of the Black has a riff so heavy it feels like a thunderstorm. Just two guys, bass and drums, but the sound is massive. How? The bass is run through guitar amps and effects, creating a wall of sound that tricks your ears into thinking it's 6 players. And let's not forget Queens of the Stone Age. No One Knows is built around a hypnotic desert rock riff that just keeps pulling you deeper. It's weird, it's dry, but you can't turn away. These aren't just guitar lines. They're identities, the DNA of rock. So what's the future of the riff? Let's end where it all began. The riff will never die. The world has changed. We stream music now. AI writes songs. Guitars aren't everywhere like they used to be. But the riff? It's still alive. Every new generation rediscovers it. Every teenage kid in a bedroom somewhere plugs in, hits that first distorted chord, and suddenly they're part of the legacy. Because the riff is more than music. It's a call to arms, a statement, a feeling that words can't explain. You don't have to know music theory. You don't need fancy equipment. Just one guitar, one moment, and one idea. And when that idea strikes, you know. So whether it's Layla, Kashmir, Sunshine of Your Love, or Seven Nation Army, these riffs aren't just sounds. They're memories. And as long as there's stories to tell, guitars to strum, and emotions to scream, the riff will never fade. Because every time someone hears those first few notes and turns up the volume, rock lives again.